life is 30% what happens to you, 70% how you react to it.
Welcome to the Health Science Coach Podcast. My name is Drew Garner, and I'm a health science and physical education teacher. This is a podcast to help students, parents, and recent graduates learn about pathways into healthcare and sports medicine careers. These industry professionals lay out how their experiences have helped them get to where they are now. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe to the channel or download through your podcast player. Thanks again for spending some time with us today. Now let's dig in.
Yeah, awesome. So, I'm the head of real world evidence and behavioral science for the consumer healthcare division at Sanofi.
Okay.
And so basically within Sanofi itself is a very large pharmaceutical company, right? That we have, areas of rare diseases, oncology, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, vaccines is another big area for us. But we also have a consumer healthcare division arm. And so that's we own like Allegra, Gold Bond, some of those kind of brands. And so those are more the brands that we oversee and that we're responsible for. It's sort of kind of thought of as like the self-care arm or the over-the-counter arm.
Okay.
So products that you don't need to go visit a doctor to see. And so we have kind of the over-the-counter products, but then we also have products that we switch from prescription to over-the-counter. Like, for example, Allegra at one point in time was a prescription, and then it switched to over-the-counter. And so we also have some products like that we work on where we bring them over-the-counter so that way there's more accessibility and everything to the population for those types of medicines.
Yeah. And so you've been there for 9 years and you kind of worked through the program or through your company, developing different things. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But currently, kind of give us what a week in the life of or a day in the life of what your position does for Sanofi.
Yeah, well, the nice thing is there's no like one typical day. I mean, every day is very different, comes with very unique challenges. I think that's also because, so for example, real world evidence and behavioral science are, as scientific disciplines, they're very new fields.
Yeah.
And so very evolving landscapes, a lot of working with health authorities on working on adopting new evidence in new ways. And so again, with my position being, the head of the area, I work with a lot of my team on the various studies that they're running, the engagements that they have, et cetera. And so, luckily it's a lot of different engagements, but it's a lot of, problem solving, working through new challenges, trying to be innovative, so trying to find new ways to use evidence, new ways to, differentiate ourselves. So I think that's one of the things I like about the job too, is that, there's not really any one set schedule. It's all very dependent on what's in front of you. A lot of meetings, I will say that, definitely a lot of meetings. So a lot of time spent on Zoom here talking to the camera, but comes with the territory. So.
That's right. Yeah. So you studied your undergraduate at University of Iowa, and you earned your bachelor's of science in integrative physiology. Can you kind of describe what that degree is and how you kind of got interested in wanting to study that?
Yes. Yeah. Well, so originally I was going to go to medical school, and this degree pathway was a very big feeder into the medical school. And basically what the discipline focused on is, the physiology of your body, like how your body moves, and looking at it in a connected way. And so it was a degree that had a lot of anatomy, just a lot of like kind of that medical aspects of it.
Right.
And so, that's kind of the reason why I went on that pathway. Cause, when I was an undergrad, I was originally thinking I was going to, go into medical school. And it wasn't until I think, second semester senior year that I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. So a little late to change your degree at that point.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. So how did you choose Iowa, and like at what point did you kind of pivot, like you said, from, your senior year, not going into med school? Where did that lead you to then next?
Yeah, so again, I'm originally from Iowa, and so University of Iowa having a very strong school of medicine and everything, that was kind of natural choice. Plus, there's some academic scholarships also never hurt anyway.
Right.
But, I think, that's why they were kind of a natural choice for me to go there. And again, taking the classes and everything at Iowa, and I finally got to my senior year where I was going through the medical school applications. I enjoyed the coursework, I enjoyed the science, I enjoyed that aspect of it. But when I was actually going through the medical school applications, I realized I didn't know if I actually wanted the doctor part of it. So I was kind of stuck in this conundrum of, okay, well, I like the science, but I'm not a doctor. Like, I don't know what else is out there. I think, like, what else can you be if you're not a doctor with this area? I had a lot of background doing like some lab research, some bench lab research.
Okay. Yeah.
I knew that that wasn't going to be my experience, my field. I knew that that's not the field that I wanted to get into. And so, honestly, that's really what ultimately led me to Boston.
Okay.
Was because I kind of found, the area that I got my master's degree in, which is policy and health management. And really, at the time, I was more looking at it as like the hospital management side. So,
Right.
If I did turn around, go back to be a doctor, I could use this hospital management degree to, run a department one day, or, do one of those things, et cetera. And so that's kind of what led me down, this MPH route.
Right.
Really, because, to be honest, when I was going into grad school, and even largely today, there's not really an academic program for, my field.
Okay.
And there's some that are coming through. It's called like healthcare services research, but
Right.
there's still, like, again, like I said, it's very in its infancy. And so there's only a handful of schools in the country that are really doing it. And so it's just kind of one of those niche areas that, you kind of landed into, not really because I was seeking it out, but just because I knew what I liked. And so I kind of said, well, I like doing this. Well, I don't like doing that. I like doing this. I don't like doing that. And eventually it kind of led me down this road.
Okay. So would you work with somebody that would be like a clinical laboratory scientist in your guys' field and departments?
So actually, where my area works more is in medical.
Okay.
So we're considered part of medical. And so really what we do with real world evidence and behavioral science is, when you think about, generating evidence, you have your traditional clinical trials.
Yeah.
And then you have all this evidence that you generate outside of the clinical trial. Well, we're responsible for all of that.
Okay.
So, so for example, you're wearing a wearable.
Yep.
We design studies that track your wearable, track your activity data, track your sleep data. And what we can do is, say, for example, during allergy season, say you're taking Allegra, we could help understand, when are your symptoms coming, and being
Right.
help to guide you, just by even, for example, your wearable data, to say, hey, you might be having symptoms come up. You should probably take an Allegra, to help stave off those symptoms or minimize the impact. Like, what my team does is generates a lot more of that type of evidence.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool just to be able to know. And I read an article a while back about a wearable detecting something like that with a nurse. I think it was something heart related issues. So that's pretty exciting that that's coming to the smartwatches and wearables and devices like that. So how did you kind of choose to go to Boston for, like you said, you're from Iowa, you went to Iowa, and then made that big jump over to Boston. How did that kind of work out for you?
Well, obviously it worked out pretty well. I'm still there. So,
There you go.
to be honest, it was random. I had never been to Boston. I didn't know anybody that lived in Boston.
Okay.
Like I said, I was still considering medical school at the time. And so, to be honest with you, I really wanted to go somewhere new and different and try it out. And I
Yep.
always figured, what, if I don't like it, I can always come back and, go down my normal path anyway. And also too, I was looking at, Boston is really kind of a healthcare mecca. You've got, a lot of the top hospitals in the country are out here. Most of the pharmaceutical presence in the country is out here. And so it was just a good spot for it. Plus some of the schools out here and everything. And so, got applied to Boston University, got in and thought it would be a great opportunity to do something new, and, figured I'd jump on it.
Yeah, no, that really is kind of cool to, like you said, do something new. And like you mentioned, if you don't like it, you always have that opportunity to just come back and go down the route that you thought you wanted to do to begin with. But taking that advantage of doing something like that's pretty amazing to be able to. And like you said, it worked out really well for you because you're still out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's, I know one of the things you're talking about is just one of the, one of the things that, one of the decisions you're happy that you made. And I think that's one of them, really is taking that chance and, taking that risk just to say, hey, you know what, if, like you said, if it doesn't work out, that's fine. At least I took the chance.
So upon graduating with your master's from Boston, you got a couple of different internships with Children's Hospital at Boston, the program for patient safety and healthcare consulting intern. When you were doing those types of intern jobs or entry level positions, what kind of takeaways did you kind of get from those that kind of helped you progress your pathway into where you are now?
Well, to be honest with you, because it's a very competitive scene out here academically in Boston, a lot
Yeah.
of them were unpaid internships. So really what I was taking away was the experience. And, just learning from people doing the job. Because I think that's one thing you find out is very true is that, it's one thing to learn everything in a nice, clean academic setting, and then it's another thing to learn how it actually operates and is in the real world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, some of those early on opportunities were, even opportunities that say, like, I knew I wasn't going to go in this field. You know what? I wanted to gain experience on it because, like you said, you understand what you want to do, but also what you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was a lot of, too, of just trying to take advantage of as many opportunities as I could.
Yeah, no, I really like that kind of just learning from your real world experience and, deciding if that was a route that you wanted to go. At some point, something along with those jobs sounded interesting to you to want to kind of dip your foot in there. But then getting that experience and knowing you wanted to kind of pivot or change a little bit. So you spent the last 9 years now at Sanofi. Let's kind of work through your progression and what you learned along the way that helped you become where you are.
So I'm actually probably one of the unique people of our generation that I basically started at Sanofi right after graduate school,
Yeah.
and I've worked with them my whole career.
Yeah.
Luckily, they're a very large global pharmaceutical company, so I could operate in many different roles across the organization and get a lot of different types of experience from them. But again, I really joined the company because at the time it was called Genzyme,
Yeah.
and we specialized in rare diseases. And really, the reason why I joined them is I was working at a consulting company that we worked on a rare disease project, and I really fell in love with rare diseases because they were very nuanced. They were very specific. I mean, it was a, almost a person by person basis that you got to know these people. And, they were just so passionate. And so I really fell in love working on rare disease projects.
Okay.
And so that's what originally lured me into joining Genzyme or Sanofi now. And I worked over and as you can kind of see with my background, I've kind of divided up my time in rare diseases and consumer healthcare. So kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, as you would.
Right.
But that's why I originally joined. And when I joined, I was doing a lot more work looking at payer reimbursement for rare diseases. And if you know anything about the reimbursement system, rare diseases are the most expensive drugs in the world because they cost just as much money to make, but instead of spreading it over 100 million people, you're spreading it over 100 people.
Right.
And so two of the drugs actually that I was managing were in the top 10 most expensive drugs in the world at the time. And so generating this evidence to justify their reimbursement was very challenging, obviously, because when you're talking about a drug that's upwards of, $700,000, $1 million a year for the rest of the patient's life,
Right.
then you start getting into conversations of, well, how much is a life worth? Like you're talking $40 million, $50 million, so like you have to generate evidence to justify some of these things. And so again, it was one of those things that I really fell in love with it because it wasn't a cookie cutter job, right? You're not just doing the same things over and over again. It's always new challenges. And so really what I started falling in love with wasn't the negotiations necessarily. It was generating the evidence to justify it, to understand like, well, why do we have this medicine?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really kind of what led me down this real world evidence path, because at that point, the drug is already approved. The clinical trials are done.
Yeah.
All that you're generating is evidence out there in the real world to justify why this drug works. and why, you should still be using it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I really started getting into a lot more of real world evidence and everything. And then I started drifting over to consumer healthcare because it's a very interesting field in that with all of our products in consumer healthcare, really the consumer is the physician, the payer, and the patient all in one, right? They're the decision maker. And so we need to generate evidence for consumers. And your everyday consumer, like if I start reading you phase 3 trial results, I'm going to see your eyes gloss over, like I'm going to lose you immediately. Yeah. But like if I start talking to you about like, hey, guess what? You walked 300 steps more yesterday than you did today because you got a better night's sleep.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be more meaningful to you, right? And that's where our real world evidence comes in. And I really added on the behavioral science because you realize that there's so much unconscious decision making that we do that goes unrecognized on a daily basis, that once you start calling that out, it makes some of this evidence much more meaningful. Like you start realizing the impact that the evidence has because it's actually changing your behavior. It's actually changing your health. And so I guess that's kind of how I just, navigated the course a little bit. It's a very roundabout path, but I think that's part of the beauty of it, right?
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I really like, like you said, justifying the real world evidence about how much a life is worth and what kind of medications is really going to help this person live a better and healthy life. That's one of the things that I kind of preach in health class when I'm talking to my high school freshmen and sophomores is your health is the only thing that you're born with and that you die with. And so my job is to try to give you a roundabout general health talk, I guess, from the book, from my experiences about how to help you live a healthier life so you can continue living and doing the things you enjoy. And so I think where you're talking about the wearables and the real world experience, I think is really interesting about versus the the stage 3 research studies and publications, because those get very lengthy and kind of hard for general public to comprehend.
Exactly. And that's another thing that we really, embrace with consumer healthcare is the most important person in your healthcare is you. Like it's not your physician. They're not with you every day when you're making those simple choices of what am I going to eat for dinner? Or am I going to go on this 15-minute walk or, watch this next episode on Netflix, right? And like those simple decisions add up to being more important, a lot of times than even large decisions that your doctor makes. Or, and so really a lot of the things that we focus on is how can we, and people are already doing it, especially with the pandemic. Like we've seen rises in people being more conscious about their own health. Like I'm now aware every time I have a cough because I'm like, oh crap, is that COVID? Like whereas before I've got a cough, I need to persist for about a week before I even notice it, right? But and we're even seeing rises in people Googling their own symptoms and stuff. We've seen in the past 2-3 years that's gone up dramatically. Yeah. And so now for us, it's more about, people want this information about their health and how can I improve our health? Now it's about how can we get them the right information? Because just getting information may not be enough. Getting them the right information is how you actually make the biggest impact and actually give the biggest benefit to the consumer.
Yeah. Like you said, kind of the experience of that person is looking out on WebMD or looking out on the internet. There's going to be 500 different answers to the one question about what happened to who. And by getting them the right information, like you mentioned, I think that's key. What do you find just really rewarding about your job?
Honestly, for me, it's it's the little victories, right? It's the the publications that we get or the studies that actually make an impact. One of the big initiatives that I'm working on right now is I'm working with my team to try and work with global health authorities and regulatory authorities on using new evidence in new ways. Because, I think even, when I don't mean to badmouth the FDA here, but, even our own health authorities,
yep,
they still look at evidence, like we did back in the 70s. We look at clinical trials. Yes, we're opening our eyes a little bit more to electronic medical records, et cetera. But with this digital revolution that we're in, like we've got a whole new data source open to us. And so, I mean, I think for me, I get excited about the new opportunities that are available.
Right.
I mean, I think my team will tell you that too. Like I think it's exciting about the potential, and the potential impact that we can have in leveraging this evidence the right way and improving, the overall health and improving the health of the individual.
Absolutely. So one of the questions that I kind of talk about is misconceptions. And as a pharmaceutical company, you're developing all these different types of drugs and or over-the-counter medicines for people to use at home. What kind of misconceptions do you kind of feel that are out there that deal with, public health and pharmaceuticals?
Well, I mean, obviously there's the drug pricing discussion that everybody loves. And that's one that I was, very actively involved with for a long time. There's a lot of misconceptions around that. That's probably a whole other podcast for you, to be honest. But I think there's also this a lot of times, and again, like I've said, I've only worked with one company my whole career, so I can really only speak to that experience. But sometimes with pharmaceutical companies, there's this sort of like evil empire thought, that like, oh, they're just out for the bottom line, the bottom dollar, et cetera. And it's really not the case, because ultimately the way that our products are better is by giving better health to you, right? And to the consumer. And so, that's really our ultimate goal. And so, I guess, that's probably the biggest misconception that's out there just with like, the pharmaceuticals and everything. But, and even in academic worlds, right? Like people always joke around that, if you're in academics and you come over to industry, like you came over to the dark side, And so, like we've got this evil empire sort of backdrop to us. But, again, I would say that's probably it. I would say probably the other thing is that, and maybe this is more relevant for the discussion today, but one thing that I found is that, you don't always have to be the smartest person in the room. And a lot of it is the recognition that you're not, and the self-awareness that, I know my piece and I know kind of, what I'm supposed to do, but I don't have to have the answer to everything. And I think that's something that, especially coming out of like, grad school or college or, when you're first getting into your job, you kind of feel like that, like you feel like, oh, I need to know everything. I need to have the answer for everything. Well, no, you don't, right? And like, you're actually there to learn and to get more experience. And so, I don't know, let me find out is a very acceptable answer,
Yeah. And I've been hearing that kind of throughout a theme of different professionals. And, that's why you're kind of there to be a part of the team and have your experience and your professional expertise in some sort of category. And if you don't know, you have a group of people that you're working with on your team and your company with you to help you along that pathway.
Exactly. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, like, and I say that this is a good job of recruiting, but I recruited a team underneath me, and I think I'm the dumbest one of the bunch.
That's pretty funny. But you're hiring the right type of people for that type of experience. Let's say this one wasn't on our list of topics, but I like this question more and more. If you are hiring somebody to work for, say, your company or your team, what is a person that kind of a role, or what's the perfect hiree kind of look like for you?
I mean, there is no one perfect, right? You want a diverse team, and so like, for example, I've got, 3 different real world evidence engagement leads around the world. One in North America, one in Europe, one in Brazil. Well, my Europe one has a PhD in statistics, very strong statistical background. My Brazilian one is an infectious disease physician. The one in North America, if I can get it released, is a PhD economist, right? And so there's no one perfect candidate or one ideal background. It's somebody that has the right background, the right experience, but also too, I mean, it's because you're going to get to a point where everybody has the right degrees, right, and the right, job profiles. A lot of it too is a team culture fit. You want somebody that fits with your team well, because if you have a team that gets along great, guess what? It's going to be high performing. If you have a team that hates working together, doesn't want to go to each other with anything, you're going to have issues, right? And so that was one of the biggest things that I focused on when I was recruiting my department is, yes, not only trying to find the best people for the job, but the people with the right mentality, the right mindset. And I always said, I don't want somebody that's just looking to, clock in for their 9 to 5. I want somebody that, gets excited about what we're doing and gets passionate about it and, really, kind of has that same mindset that I have with it. And if you can create a team like that, well, now you've created a culture, right? And then it's easy to bring somebody else into that culture and they'll adopt it, right? And so, even when you're going out and looking for jobs as like a job seeker, I think that's another big thing that you need to consider is it's not just about the, like I say, the X's and O's, the, what's the level, what's the salary, et cetera. It's what's the company like? What's the manager like? What's the culture like? These are all very important things because otherwise, like at the end of the day, guess what? You're going to get a paycheck or you're going to hate your job, so.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better myself. The culture is a big time hit on, fitting in the right spot at the right time and being the right person for that position. As far as professional development goes, what type of professional development do you guys see as far as industry professionals and learning about the new infectious disease type stuff?
Yeah, so again with us, like I said, real world evidence and everything is it's a new discipline, right? And so it's evolving. And so again, we really try to be at the leading edge, at the cutting edge of it. And so, I really challenge my team to be innovators in their study designs and everything. But also part of that is working directly with industry groups around the globe and making sure that, we're leading the thought making around how these types of research are done and how these types of activities are used and how this evidence is seen in the eyes of the regulatory authorities, the health authorities, et cetera. And so, it's really about, like I said, challenging ourselves, to be, kind of innovative in that and to be, some of the leaders in that, but also, kind of like what you were saying too about, being part of some of the, international groups, like the ISPOR, the ISPs, some of the international societies that focus on this type of research. And also, like we publish a lot of our research. So that way, you get it out there that, this is new research. This is some of the innovative stuff that we're doing. So, it's a lot through publications as well as kind of establishing your credentials, credibility in the field, et cetera.
Yeah. So then with industry trends, I know, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, but COVID was one of them. There's certain infectious diseases that pop up throughout, every 3, 4, 5 years, those kind of rare diseases. What are kind of the industry trends as far as pharmaceutical companies go with working on these new diseases you guys are finding?
Well, obviously, COVID was a special case in and of itself. I mean, that was kind of let's drop everything and deal with it.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely kind of its own case because we all really kind of pitched in together to make sure that like for example, like our company, even though we weren't one of the early ones with the vaccine, because we're one of the largest suppliers of the flu vaccine, we helped out with a lot of the supply chains and getting the COVID vaccine distributed. Right. And so it was just kind of everybody pitching in and helping each other out with it. But in terms of like, other emerging diseases, other, even rare diseases, to be honest, it's one of those things that each company kind of evaluates on their own.
Okay.
And that's a lot of times how, pharmaceutical companies have their pipeline is, either you unlock a new therapeutic area for a current medication that you have, or you unlock a new mechanism of action or something like that. You unlock a new medication, and then you understand which diseases can you treat. And so you can honestly go at it from either way, depending on kind of where the discovery is.
Right.
But yeah, that's usually how a lot of the pipelines and everything like that fits into, which again, right there, another great healthcare science field.
Yeah. Yeah, learning more about them every day. Professionally, you've been with your company almost 10 years now. And like you said, you've only had your one experience with that company as far as work related goes. What's something that you're most proud of achieving so far in your professional career?
I mean, there's a number of like just different successes that I could point to, like especially like working on some of the rare disease products where we got successful reimbursement. Like I mean, like and at that level, like I said, you're almost on a person by person level where like when I got a drug, like for example, I got a drug launched in Australia, and I mean I got personal cards written to me from patients in Australia who now got access to the therapy. And so like things like that are really cool.
Yeah,
But I mean, also too, I think I am, like I said, I think number one, just navigating, the world of a large pharma for 10 years within the same company, I think in of itself is pretty rare these days in doing. But also too, I think, honestly, I think the thing I'm most proud of probably is at the beginning when I graduated from grad school, I kind of set out professional goals for myself, and it's something I tell a lot of people to do. That it's a really good idea. Long-term professional goals, and this is something I even tell my team is I tell them that when we sit down and we onboard, I say, well, what position do you want to retire in? Because yes, it's fine doing a short, a medium, long-term goals, but I always make the analogy, you never take off in a ship without a destination in mind, right? And so, yeah, the destination might change, sure. But think about it. What position do you want to retire in? And that can kind of help build you towards, what are you thinking? Where do you want to go? And so, I've kind of always done that and had that mindset. And so, when I started after grad school, I set out some personal milestones for myself to hit, professional wise and everything. And I think the thing I'm honestly most proud of is that, I am accelerated on that path. I have not only hit those milestones, but I've actually, been moving faster than that. I've been outpacing them. Yeah, and so I know that's kind of a selfish thing to be proud of, but I mean, it's something that, like I set a goal for myself, and I've kind of been hitting it. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, overachieving is something to definitely be proud of as far as your professional level. So let's take that question and kind of push it out 10 years from now. Like you said, you want to have your goals and your long-term goals set for you when you started out of college. You've been in the industry now 10 years. Let's look at the next 10 years. What do you kind of see yourself doing professionally in the next 10 years?
yeah, and I mean that's the $1 million question, as they say, right? And so,
Yeah.
I think, I definitely see a path forward for myself, like within Sanofi. They've been very good with me in terms of giving me growth opportunities, development opportunities. Eventually looking at, moving into those executive roles,
Okay.
and moving into more of an executive leadership position. I think that's probably where it'd be focused. But also too, and this is one of the things I always say too is, it never hurts to keep an eye on the horizon. I think, if everybody always says, like, if you could have one superpower, what would it be? I would always say that mine would be to recognize every opportunity in front of me. Because if you just had like a star above an opportunity, like it would be, it'd be unheard of, like what things you could do.
Yeah.
And so, I would never say that, yes, I have been with Sanofi here like 9, 10 years. It'd be great to be with them another 10 years, but I think there's also an opportunity where we can look around and say, well, do we want to, maybe pivot and get experience, in another area, in another field? I would never say never, right, to those opportunities, and that's kind of some advice I would give too is always keep an open mind, because you never know. I never in a million years, like if you would have told me in college I'd be working for a pharmaceutical company, the guy would have laughed at you. Like I'd be like, there's no way I'd ever work for a pharmaceutical company.
Right.
Like, I mean, I think you just got to keep an open mind.
Yeah, I like that. And by, having a star above your opportunities kind of leads into the next question. If you did have stars above your opportunities, it'd be easy to make those jumps and be like, oh, I'm going to go do that. And I'm going to go do that. And I'm going to go do this. And you did kind of do a jump for something when you went to grad school in Boston, not knowing anybody there. and you had a kind of a safe fallback where you could come back to Iowa and do what you wanted to do. But along the way, have you had anything that you wish you could have gone back and changed or made different, or maybe a regret of not doing something?
I mean, there's always, I mean, anybody that tells you they don't have any regrets is either lying or they're Jesus. Like, I don't know. um, but yeah, I mean, there's always things that you look back on and you're like, man, like I could have jumped on that opportunity, or I could have taken that route. But I don't know that I would say that I regret any of it. I think, every decision, like, because it's very rare, at least professionally, that it's really a wrong decision. Usually what you're choosing between is which is the better option, right? And
Right.
so, like yes, don't get me wrong, there are times where, yes, there is a wrong decision to make. But a lot of times it's, which is the better option for you. And
Right.
so it's hard to play the guessing game, where you look back and say, oh, should I have taken that job or should I have taken that opportunity? And so, I look back and I always say, like, well, one day do I want to get back working in rare diseases? Potentially. Do I think I missed opportunities there? Like, no, I don't think so, because I think, no matter the opportunity that you took, you're gaining experience, you're gaining, a perspective, so I don't think there's any like, golden ticket that I missed, that I just kind of walked by on the street. But yeah, I mean, I think there's always, did I weigh my options and did I choose the best option? Well, I don't know, but did I
Right.
choose a good option? I think so.
Good. Yeah, I like that. So let's kind of look back at, your educational advice. So let's say you are now a junior in high school and you are wanting to go down the path of where you are now, kind of studying rare diseases, behavioral science, and kind of just that general like for science type stuff. What advice would you give yourself as a junior in high school to prepare yourself for a career in that field?
Well, I would say, like, number one, you know, get experience, right? Like, yes, obviously getting good grades is important, but at the end of the day, getting good grades is only going to get you so far. Colleges, medical schools, grad schools, etc. They're looking for not just somebody that is, smart with the books, but also can demonstrate that they're smart in the real world, smart with their experiences. And so, yes, it's very important to get good grades, but it's also very important to get experience to surround that too, because as well, like when you go in for interviews and when you go in for other things, they're not giving you a test. They're talking to you, right? And so they need to be able to relate to you and they need to be able to relate to your experiences as well. And so that was, I mean, like, again, if I'm going back to myself, like, back in the day, like I was very focused on like, okay, yes, got to get good grades, got to get good grades. Well, yes, you do, but I didn't realize how much value all the other experiences that I was doing, the extracurricular activities, those kind of things, like they weren't just a thing to do. There were ways to get other experiences that was actually a way to differentiate myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. By standing out and getting some real world experience. Um, so
I feel like I need like an MTV Real World logo behind me or something.
real world, it's all you. So somebody in undergraduate that's maybe looking to take yourself now, put yourself as an undergraduate in these times. Somebody that is getting that degree and wanting to go into public health and maybe wanting to study rare diseases, that is already in college. Let's look at that junior senior in college. Where they're going down that pathway of determining what they want to do, kind of like when you pivoted from med school to working in your field. What advice would you have for that age group?
I would say, like, number one, keep your mind open. I know everybody knows the old adage that like X% of people graduate with the major they went in with, and it's a very low number, but I mean, it is real. And I always thought of myself as like, oh, I'm not that person. Like, I know what I want. I want to be a doctor. Well, things change, right? And like, and your priorities change. And the people that I see struggle are the ones that can't let that go. They're the ones that like, oh no, I want to be this. And like, I've always wanted to be this. I need to be this. And they're the ones that honestly, a lot of times they don't figure it out until they're out there in the real world. And they're like, oh crap, this is what being an accountant is. I don't mean to pick on accountants, sorry. But, like, so I guess that's the thing, and be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself as to what you like and what you don't like. Because, in college, you're really exposed to the most different material that you're ever going to be in your life. Like you have different courses that you're taking. Be honest with what courses you like and also what courses you don't like, because that will help tell you, well, what type of job do I want?
Right. Yeah. I like those. And so then that kind of transitions to, somebody that is getting ready to graduate, that is looking for a job. By looking at those classes you mentioned that of what they like, and it help them with their job decision of where they should kind of fit in. So somebody that is getting ready to graduate, how would you kind of take yourself through that if you're getting ready to regraduate with your master's and starting to look for positions? What advice would you have for yourself?
I mean, I know everybody says it, but it's true. Network. I mean, you get jobs by networking, because everybody in grad school gets good grades. Like everybody does well. You need a foot in the door, really. And you need, and honestly, a great way to start networking is through your professors. And I mean, this holds true in college as well. Like, and I wish, this is maybe one thing, if I could have redone it, I would like to redo it, is it took me until grad school to realize what an asset your professors are, especially the good ones. And I mean, because they're there to help you. They want you to do well. It makes them look good, right?
Right.
And so it wasn't until grad school that I really, became friends with the professor and really started talking to him about the material, and not just like, hey, what's on the quiz, but like, okay, so if we're talking about this, what do you think about that? And actually posing philosophical questions and having discussions with them. And I mean, and it's through this professor, like I ended up becoming a TA for him while I was in grad school. And he actually is the one that, put my name in for this fellowship opportunity at Sanofi. Right.
Yeah.
And so it was through this professor that I even got, my current job, my current opportunity that I was with, but again, that's why I say, like, especially with grad school is very important to be networking, to be, understanding, well, what does this job mean? Well, what does this job mean? Because, like, you're going to find that some jobs aren't what you thought they were.
Pretty quickly. Exactly. And we could talk all day about that. So somebody gets a job, they're already working in their field for 3 to 6 months. They're in the industry, they're doing their thing. What advice do you have for that type of person? As you're looking back at yourself, 6 months into your first position with Sanofi, what advice would you have for yourself as far as what you should be doing, who you should be talking to, questions like that?
Just remember, like, especially at this point in your career, you should be learning every day. Like every day, you should come home at the end of the day and be like, wow, I learned this today. I didn't realize that. Because at this point, that's what you need to be doing to really build your career and build yourself and I mean, I still look at myself that, I should be getting more experience every day, and I should still be learning and growing every day, because otherwise, you're going to stay stagnant. You're going to stay flat at where you are. And so, I think if you come in with that mindset, but also, I guess, on the other side of that, I think another thing that's very, very helpful, especially early on in your career, is self-awareness. And just understanding who you are, what your strengths are, but also what your weaknesses are.
Right.
And one of the biggest drawbacks I see with a lot of people, especially coming out of like Ivy League universities, like, that interview with us, is they're not self-aware. You ask them, well, like, and this is a popular question I love asking people, and I got it from an old manager of mine, but it's like, why should I not hire you? And a lot of these Ivy League kids struggle with that question. Because they've been trained to only answer it the other way. They haven't been trained to understand, well, what are my limitations? What do I need to work on in this role? And so, I mean, I think that's also very important early on is, you need to understand where your gaps are, because that's where you need to, build upon. A weakness is only a weakness until you make it a strength, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I really, really like that question. Kind of gets you thinking about, you don't know what you don't know, and it's okay to ask for help. And so that's interesting. It'd be very interesting to hear how people react to that question as far as why I shouldn't hire you.
I've gotten some interesting responses.
Really good. Couple more questions here for you. This one is a two-part question. So this came off of our athletic trainer. And hers was, if you dislike feet, then being an athletic trainer is not for you. So she basically said, you're around feet, taping ankles, looking at rolled ankles, that kind of stuff. If feet is something that bothers you, being an athletic trainer is not going to be the thing for you. So as far as your role, if you dislike blank, working in public health and with diseases is not going to be the right career path for you.
I mean, I would say specifically like for real world evidence and everything, like I would say, like if you don't like challenges, it's not for you, because like I said, it's a very new discipline. And so a lot of the time, some of the studies that we're designing and that we're doing, we're literally doing them for the first time, in the country that they're in, for example. And so because of that, I always say, like we're cutting the path through the jungle. Like everybody else is going to be able to drive through after us, but we have to cut the path. And that's the only way that you can be the leader, that you can be the innovator, right? Is you have to be the one that does that cuts that path. And so, I mean, and I was very upfront with everybody I recruited. I said, this role is going to be a challenging role, but the other side of the coin from a challenge is an opportunity. And so because of those challenges, there's a lot of big opportunities to make big changes and to make big impacts, right? And so I would say that that's the thing, it's definitely something that, like, you're not going to come into work and, sleep through till lunch and then, come back and, hang out by the water cooler till 3 and coast through the rest of the day, right?
Right. No, that's really cool by, having that real world look at what you're doing and what helps and what doesn't help is like you said, cutting the path for others to follow after you. And let's flip that on it and say, if you do like blank, then this is the right career path.
I would say if you do like, and it's going to be similar, but I'm going to word it in another way so I can count it as a different answer, right? But I would say, if you like questioning, and you like, kind of, because what we always talk about with real world evidence studies is, unlike clinical trials, is we call them fit for purpose, meaning they're designed to the research question that they're made for.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really a lot of, scientific questioning. What type of study do we need for this research question? What type of population do we need to evaluate? What outcomes are meaningful to this population? And in a perfect example that I give to that is, and I don't mean to keep going back to allergy here, but like when we were just launching an allergy study, one of the things we talked about was impact on allergies, from an adolescent's perspective.
Okay.
But what you talked about is it's not just from a caregiver, but also what is the impact on the teenager themselves. And there we talked about, okay, well, the standard studies, measure, school absences and things like that. We said, okay, well, that's not enough. Just because they missed school, was there a performance impact?
Right.
If they were an A student before, were they still an A student, or did that drop them down to a B? What were the social impacts, that this kid had? Also, extracurricular activities, sports, other things, because, for teenagers, as like some of those things are way more important than school, let's be honest. And so, you look at the performance because that's what the adults care about, but then you have to assess all these other things because those are more meaningful to the teenagers, right? And so it's one of those things where you kind of have to adapt your evidence to your audience.
I like that a lot. I think I've dealt with allergies my whole life, and allergic to trees and grass, and having a lawn mowing company and playing baseball was probably not the right connection, but that's what I did. And I dealt with the allergy symptoms and all that stuff, and I still battle with it. But, some of those questions that you're asking I think they're really cool because of the impact on me if I missed a game, or if I couldn't run as fast as I needed to, or if, maybe I got a bloody nose and had to sit out for so much time. Those kind of questions, and looking at them as a research side and standpoint, I think is really interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, and like we say, it's that evidence that you're not going to get from a clinical trial, right?
Yep. Exactly. And then a couple more questions. Do you have a mantra or quote that you kind of try to live your professional work life through?
I don't know if it's professional life. I would say it's my just
Real
life
life
in general. Yeah, and it's a quote that actually got told me in high school, and it was after I had just been in like a bad car accident.
Okay.
But it's life is 30% what happens to you, 70% how you react to it. I mean, I think it is 100% true, right? Because there's a big component of your life that you can't control. Like you can't control like where you were born, who, like what race you are, things like this. These are out of your control. But how you present yourself to the world and how you present yourself after a challenge, for example, or after a failure, for example, and even more importantly, after a success. Like everybody talks about dealing with failure, but there's a right way of dealing with success as well. And keeping all of this in perspective is, it kind of is that 70%, right? It's that how are you dealing with everything around you, and how are you communicating that back to the world? I think, it's something just very good to keep in mind. And, I mean it, like I said, I mean it both ways. I mean it not just in terms of hard times and picking yourself up, but also, good times, and keeping yourself humble.
Keeping yourself in check. That hits it on the head, by controlling what's around you, controlling yourself around the environment around you is how you're able to control that 30% of you.
Yeah, exactly.
So if anybody's interested in integrative physiology, public health, and wants to contact you, do you have any information or places that you would recommend them doing some research or getting in contact you through?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I'm happy to share my email with you. They can always reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect.
I'm happy to, connect them. Like I said, there are different, societies or, educational points. I think it, depends on, where are you in your course of your training, and exactly, yeah, I'm not going to send the same material to a grad student as a high school student, but,
right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say, feel free to reach out to me, through email or through LinkedIn or one of those things, and, happy to connect.
Perfect. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, Andrew.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks again, Drew. Happy to do it.
If you've made it this far into the episode, I want to thank you again for watching. Please subscribe, share, and comment below with any questions or comments you may have. If you're interested in more information about other professions within healthcare careers, please visit healthsciencecoach.com and talk to your school counselor or academic advisor. As always, stay happy, healthy, and live life with passion.